Listen, this conversation around global digital IDs is framed in extremes. Total control on one end and total collapse on the other. But in reality, let's look at what the next couple of years, especially 2028 to 2030, are going to look like if you do not exit America and the West altogether. And before we get into this topic, I want to make something very clear. We have been outside of the States for 6 years. We have given birth abroad. We have visited mountain villages, done business in these villages, lived in all these different territories across southeastern Africa, and we are here to tell you, no matter what it looks like in America, Africa is not going to be all on to digital IDs, because there are people who quite literally do not have electricity, do not have water, do not have the same jobs and technology and AI that you have in the West. So I want to make that clear from lived experience alone. In fact, if you are somebody that has lived in Zambia, South Africa, Angola, Ghana, you already know what I'm talking about. There's literally an island out here called Comoros where they literally have only one ATM.
Yeah.
So understand, the global South is not all going to be impacted simply because they're far behind. But this creates a level of leverage for you if you exit America on time.
Yes, guys, leverage is key. Leverage is key. I'm telling you guys, that is a good point, because what we realize, like living abroad, just for example, it kind of brings me to this thought of just the other day, I called a taxi and he was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry I didn't receive your call because I turned my data off," right? So we are used to, having our data always on, having our water always running, having our electricity always running. But here on this side of the world, you learn very quickly why people do this, because it makes sense. Like if you don't need your water, turn it off. If you don't need your electricity, turn it. If you don't need your data, turn it off. So that is the leverage of just like learning how to move around. This is why a big thing that I always keep saying, you have to learn how to move around no matter what. Like, even in the mountains that we were building in, you get what I'm saying? That's a whole different area. That's a whole different vibe from where we are now. But we know how to move around. It's key. Leverage is key.
Absolutely. And this is why the reality is not going to be so structural. And therefore, it's important for you to understand that digital ID does not end travel, banking, or borders. In fact, it just changes how permission works across the Western economies. Once you understand this shift, the panic fades and strategy for you becomes possible, because we know the Most High Yah always has a Goshen, period. Point blank, period. But get this, digital ID is a gatekeeping layer. It's not necessarily a lock. And there's actually another story we can tell, but I want to get into this a little deeper, because even during COVID-19, there was a way to evade all of those technical requirements if you had the eyes to discern and see and trust and believe that there was an escape plan.
And knowledge, yeah.
So digital identity systems are being introduced under familiar language like security, efficiency, fraud prevention, and inclusion. And in practice, that's exactly how it functions, as a layer, not as a wall. But you'll still be able to travel internationally, open accounts, and access services, especially if you are outside of the West.
Yeah.
It's only in the West where these processes become conditional. Because instead of a single checkpoint in the West, showing a passport or showing a document, you will move through continuous verification systems, scanning your eyes, watching you on camera, the way that China already does. They're bringing that to the United Kingdom, to America, to Germany, to France, possibly to other territories.
Yeah, and that's where we got a comment on our video we did yesterday about the digital ID. Someone's like, yeah, like I got back to the States and they really didn't check my passport or anything. They told me to look at the screen, and that was it. You check, green check mark, you're good. So they are doing this silently.
Wow.
They're not, we are letting you guys know, but they are just, putting the systems up, seeing how it is, they need the data. They need that back testing to see how this is going to work. How can we make it better? How can we, make it smoother and things like that. So it's really starting. So you really got to be outside of the West, because things like this is not going to be
the norm.
Yeah, it's not going to be the norm, and they're not going to catch up until a little bit later.
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly it, because that's just how the global South is. The exceptions are places like a China, obviously, like a South Africa. Those are the exceptions, because those are like the main BRICS territories, those main nations that will have that technology quicker than other global South areas. But aside from those main people, there are literally countries out here like Sri Lanka, where they barely have internet, but they are processing digital nomad residence permits and visas, one of which you could actually apply for and get approved and really live like an off-grid life. Like sometimes even where we're at, we feel like we're living off-grid because it's just so off. It almost feels like you're in the jungle. You're just out here doing your own thing without all the technology that Western media and Western systems have. But this is how travel is actually going to change. Oh, by the way, oh my goodness, I almost forgot. We have 3 days left, 72 hours, until the 18th edition of the State of the Diaspora. $100. Somebody already booked their ticket yesterday for this 90-minute intensive with their 40-page curriculum workbook that we go over. The State of the Diaspora has been something that we started since 2024. Originally, it began because we were fighting corruption. And so it was the state of the diaspora in Africa, what's happening with corruption across Africa, so that you can understand the systems. But now the state of the diaspora is focused on evading these digital IDs, evading super surveillance, evading super AI, to understand what territories you can get residence, not necessarily citizenship or permanent residence. We talked about that yesterday. What places you can go to still have freedom, because they still exist, and they are asking for people like you to come.
Yes,
okay?
Exactly.
So check out the link in the description to join the State of the Diaspora. There's only 11 spots left.
Yes.
72 hours.
Look, and that's why I say that's the main thing. You got to learn how to move around. And we don't be saying these things. We say the things behind the video and these attentive. So you have a strategy. So you know where your leverage is. Leverage is key. I'm gonna keep saying it.
It is. And get this, airports are not automatically going to shut down. Like you were saying that somebody said on our channel, you're just gonna go through. They're not even gonna care about your passport. On this side of the world, I've never flown anywhere where it was just like, okay, let us scan your eye. That is not what they do. They usually look at your passport, and they take a while to look at it to make sure it's legit. They're going through, and we have a big family. They go through, you put your fingerprint, then that's it. But this thing in the West, where you go to the airport and they're scanning your eye as an American, is out of this world. They want those biometric verifications. They want digital travel authorization layered on top of passports. They want these pre-clearance systems that assess risk before you ever reach a gate. And in practical terms, this means fewer dramatic denials at the border and more quiet filtering long before you arrive. But people who experience issues after the digital ID rollouts are rarely blocked. Instead, they're delayed. They're going to be flagged for secondary screening, asked for additional documentation, placed under review without clear explanation, and you may see some of those corruption indicators that happen all through the world come up more frequently in a digital ID system, because they can just pull you aside and say, well, I just want to talk to you for 6 hours straight now. So you really need to be careful and diligent about the regions and the countries that you are going to. Now let's talk what banking is going to look like after the digital ID. Let's put ourselves in 2028, 2030. If you were to not heed our instructions and advice of leaving America as soon as possible, if you were to be like, hey, I'm just going to sit it out till 2028, maybe it'll be okay. This is what you could potentially be looking at, because banking is where change feels most personal. Your money won't disappear. It won't vanish out of thin air, but ease of access will become the real currency. So you may get flagged and they may ask you, why are you spending this amount at Walmart? Why did you go to Home Depot? Why did you go over your budget for the month that the government decided to set for you? Because what? The economy is failing, so now we as father government have to come in and tell you how much of your own money you can spend. Digital IDs allow financial institutions to link identity to transaction behavior, monitor risk continuously rather than periodically, and adjust access based on compliance signals that Papa government sets.
Yeah, that's good. Well, it's not good, but that's some good information. But I believe this is already happening in Europe in a way. You know, they have a limit. They can't pull out more than $600, or maybe euros, or maybe it's dollars or something like that.
Euros, dollars, currency, whatever.
Yeah, and that's like, dang, like, can you imagine trying to, like, you know, buy something cash, you know, and you can't do it, or you have to prepare for it day after day, you know. And we kind of was doing that when we first came to Africa, and then we soon learned about banking, international finances, and how to properly do things. So
that's good.
I'm telling you guys, this is what we be going over, like the details of like how to move around. So
no, that's good, because we did used to do that when we
we
were
used to go
in
to
Dar es
ATM.
Salaam. The ATM, the currency is not as strong as USD, so the ATM will not allow you to pull out a certain amount. In America, that amount may be $2,000 a day, whatever, 2,500, 3,000 a day. But in Tanzania specifically during that time, I don't know if it's the same, but it was about, you could take out $600 a day. And that's it, because the currency was so much lower, and it still is against USD, so you would be able to take out less money, which would be an issue for you if you are paying your rent, if you're making a big purchase, or if you just want to like go on vacation and you're going on a safari, because we all know safaris, or if you didn't know, safaris are $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, okay? So those are things you want to think about before you get locked out of your bank abroad, or before you get locked out of your bank stateside.
Yeah, that's deep, y'all. I'm telling you, it really gets detailed, and this is why, you know, we are doing this, to let you guys know how to move around. I'm gonna keep saying it. You got to know how to move around, point blank, period.
Yes, and lastly, borders are no longer going to be just physical. I think this is really creepy. I think we're going into a sci-fi movie in 2028 and beyond, because borders are not just going to be lines on a map. They're going to be identity systems, digital infrastructure, banking compliance, data sharing agreements. We already see this with Palantir. Their stock grows like crazy, and I just refuse to invest in them because the darkness behind that entity of Palantir and this data collection, where data is worth more than gold to these people now, because they can weaponize it and use it against you if you do not have a second and third residency somewhere that is going to have somewhat of a free space for you to live and be. Your top indicators of freedom, I'm going to tell you right now, if you find a country where the internet does not work everywhere across that area, that's a top indicator of freedom, because it's going to be nearly impossible to even get these systems to flip on all the way. There are territories out here where we know, hey, if I go to this area, I'm not going to have internet. But you also have to look at the beneficial side of it, like, okay, that also means that the system can't do a complete switch and flip, because they don't really have good enough internet to even back that up, okay? So crossing a border is no longer going to define access the way it used to. You cross borders repeatedly in this future, but every time you transact, renew, log in, or verify. You're verifying your Facebook. They want you to do a facial scan for Facebook. They want you to do a facial scan for Instagram. You're going to do a facial scan when you're walking down the road to go to your bank. Everything is going to be Palantir Central. If you don't know what Palantir is, you should look it up, because they are basically going to be the gods of the Western world.
Yeah, that's deep. That's deep.
And in much of the global south, this is the beautiful thing. I praise the Most High Yah for this. Systems will remain less consolidated, less automated, more relationship based, more tolerant of gradual integration, because this doesn't mean the absence of regulation. It means human scale still exists. It means humans are still going to run the world in these territories in the global south that we go over in the state of the diaspora. The difference is not moral, it's structural. Where systems are less linked to internet, to data, to systems like Palantir and Meta and even OpenAI, Claude, Elon Musk, all those folks want to put onto the atmosphere in the West, people are going to retain their sense of flexibility. And where systems are fully integrated, compliance will become continuous.
Yeah, guys, make sure you like the video, leave your comments below, and let us know, like, are you guys preparing for leverage? You gotta have leverage.
Yeah.
It's time to really think about how things are going to change in the next 4 years. And I know we've been saying, dang, like,
and quicker
we
than
said
that.
this, yeah, we said this, like, dang, in the next 5 years. Now it's 4 years. So time is not waiting on anyone, but you have to invest in yourself. You have to invest in your knowledge and your mindset to get the right information. That's very, very important.
Absolutely. And you know what? The future is not going to be about hiding or running. It's about positioning.
Exactly.
And using strategy. Where you live, bank, and travel still matter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what matters more is how these choices interact together. Because digital ID is not necessarily the end of money or movement, especially in the global South. But it is the beginning of a world where access is governed quietly and split between two systems. Understanding this is the difference into what turns into anxiety and what turns into agency and free will for you. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, family.
We'll see you in the next one.